Hello and welcome to our Estates Professional Spotlight and Q&A series. My name is Nordis Forcade-Martin. I am the founder and CEO of Florida Probate Partners, a real estate team that specializes in working with probate attorneys, professional guardians, and trust officers and helping them sell the real estate assets involved in their cases. During this series, we delve into the intricacies of probate and estate planning, and we do this with the goal of educating our community by showcasing the professionals who are problem solvers in this arena. As serious as this topic is, we like to bring light to these conversations. So do expect to have some fun. Welcome to our show. So thank you so much, Carlos. I have the pleasure today of having Carlos Aguila as our guest. And Carlos, one of the main things that really stood out to me when you and I met for the first time is how you have a very strong passion and a niche that you've built around special needs and guardianships. So I wanted to make sure we spotlighted you and gave you the opportunity to share with us. So please we welcome you, and we'd love to hear a little bit about who you are.
Thank you, Nordis. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to provide information, especially on this important topic, and provide information and education regarding guardianship and special needs planning. Carlos Aguila, founder of Aguila Law, and our primary focus is guardianship and special needs planning for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities.
Awesome, and thanks again for the opportunity to have you here. So, Carlos, tell us, what is guardianship and how does it apply to individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities?
So, guardianship is a legal process where someone can essentially go to the courthouse and ask the court to be able to receive decision-making capabilities for someone else who is unable to make decisions for themselves. So, in the context of the intellectual and developmental disability individual, it is important because when an individual reaches the age of majority, which is the age of 18, in Florida, they receive all of their rights under the law, which is not a bad thing, it's a great thing. But if the individual is unable to make decisions for themselves, major life decisions, then mom, dad, or caretaker may want to explore the guardianship process so that they can continue to advocate for their child after the age of 18 if necessary.
Okay. And how do you determine whether your loved one needs a guardian?
Yes. So for parents and for caretakers that have a child with a developmental or intellectual disability, they've been working with their child since they were born, right? To be able to assist them in really in different things, and especially as they get older into that transition to adulthood. And so as your child gets close to that age of 18, you need to begin asking yourself as mom, dad, or caretaker, can my child make major life decisions for themselves at the age of 18? And so we're talking about major decisions like medical decisions, right? Whether to continue with a course of therapy, whether to agree to a surgery or not. Financial decisions: do they understand debt? Do they understand what it means to loan money? Are they easily persuaded? Right? Decisions like that. If mom and dad, if your child is getting towards that age and this is something that they are unable to do, then you should begin exploring guardianship or its alternatives.
Got it. Okay. So, what is special needs planning? Why do you think it's important?
Special needs planning is creating an estate plan for your loved one so that they can be cared for financially, um, when mom, dad, or caretaker are no longer around. And we found that that is one of the biggest concerns that keeps parents up at night if they have an individual with a developmental or intellectual disability. It's fine while they're alive, mom and dad can provide financially for their loved one. But what about when they're no longer here? Who is going to be able to provide for them? And so by special needs planning, we are analyzing the whole person. We're analyzing the individual in terms of what their needs are going to be. And so we develop a specific type of trust. It's a special needs trust that's incorporated into the overall estate plan, where mom, dad, other family members, grandmother, grandfather can all contribute to this trust. And and so the individual will be able to receive the benefit of a trust income, but very importantly, they do not become disqualified for public benefits. So it's something that's essential to implement so that you can care for your loved one when you're no longer here.
And it's in your experience, Carlos, do you typically see that there are a lot of families because they don't have the know-how, they don't necessarily have this plan in place?
That's right. We see that very often, and there's a misconception out there that, well, I need to be wealthy to develop a trust, that, maybe I don't fit in that category, right? And that's not the case, right? Especially if you have a child with a developmental or intellectual disability, you should be putting together an estate plan, regardless. If you're a mom and dad with children, you should have an estate plan, but
Right.
especially if you have a child with a developmental or intellectual disability. So yes, there is a lack of information out there, but you don't need to be wealthy. There's different strategies to be able to
Yeah.
develop a plan.
Yeah. And I guess that leads to the next question, which is when should someone start the process of special needs planning and or guardianship, and who would be able to assist with that?
Yeah. So for special needs planning, it's never too early, right? You can start right away. You can develop an estate plan that incorporates a special needs trust. And for guardianship, that would be, as your child starts approaching that age of 18, you want to start planning maybe 17 and a half. And you need to start discussing your concerns and exploring the different options with an attorney who's knowledgeable in the areas of guardianship.
Got it. Okay. What can happen if someone doesn't plan for the future of their loved one with special needs?
So if you don't plan for your loved ones with special needs, then you're going to be met with obstacles in life. With regards to guardianship, when your child turns 18, they make all of their decisions. So if there's a situation where you need to take your child to the hospital or to the doctor, the medical staff is they're not gonna work with you, mom, dad, or caretaker. They're gonna need to talk directly with the individual. And if they're unable to express what's going on, if they're not able to consent, make major life decisions regarding their medical, then there's a big obstacle. There's a problem there. The same with, potentially if there's an issue with maybe law enforcement, right? If the law enforcement official, just doesn't understand that this person has a developmental or intellectual disability because it may not be apparent. Well, they have to work directly with the individual. You, mom, dad, or caretaker, you want to be able to have the right documents in place to be able to step in and advocate for your loved one. And in terms
Sure.
of life planning for special needs, develop a special needs plan so that you can continue to care for your child when you're no longer here financially.
And what I the lack of this planning can also, if God forbid something were to happen to someone all of a sudden, and their loved one is left without that guardian, what usually typically can happen is that someone would actually be assigned to them that has no relation whatsoever.
That could happen. The court could appoint a professional guardian to step in. And so if you have an idea of who you want to be the guardian for your child after you've passed on, then put it in writing. Develop a plan so that it's within your control.
Sure. Okay. And last serious question: how do guardianship and special needs planning impact public benefits?
So for special needs planning, um, well, for public benefits, depending on the benefit, by and large, they're means tested, meaning it depends on the individual's financial need, right? So if you're an individual with a developmental or intellectual disability and you receive an outright inheritance or gift from a loved one, then that's going to impact your eligibility for qualifying for public benefits. Rather than to do that, if it's put into a special needs trust, you get the benefit of having a trust income without becoming ineligible for public benefits. So you want to do that. And with regards to guardianship, if you have guardianship in place, that goes a long way in the application process for public benefits because when it's being reviewed, they'll see the court orders showing that there is actual need there's an actual need for the individual who's applying for these public benefits.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for that information, Carlos. That's very informative and something that unfortunately our community, a lot of folks in our community do not really know or have the information about. So in the event that someone has further questions about this, what is the best way to reach you?
You can call my office at 305-967-8554, and you can also email us at info@aguilapa.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Carlos. So now we get into the fun part of this conversation, which is the lightning round. So Carlos doesn't know the questions that are going to be asked. They're not difficult questions. It's more to get to know him as a human being. So Carlos, what's a hobby or interest you have that might surprise people?
I really enjoy going to concerts, and so
Okay.
depending, there's one band in particular that I do enjoy traveling with my wife to different cities, and so we've been able to go to concerts throughout the United States. I've gone to Wrigley Field, I've gone to Fenway, and so whenever we get the opportunity, we do that.
Awesome. That's awesome. What's favorite band so far that you've gone to see?
Pearl Jam,
Pearl Jam. Nice. Awesome. All right. So if you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
pizza, pizza,
You can never
100%.
go wrong with pizza. Love it. All right. If your life were a book, what would its title be?
Oh man, I don't know. Always, always learn. Always be willing to learn.
Always be willing to learn. Okay. So stay curious.
Stay curious.
And last one is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received and who gave it to you?
Okay, best piece of advice. That's a tough. Trying to think. Hold on. Um, my mom. Her best piece of advice. She told me that there's the things that you should strive to to have as traits are things you can't buy, like like honor, being trustworthy, courteous. These are things that, regardless of how much money, you can't buy these things. These are things that you should strive to have to achieve. They're things that you can't buy in the store.
Awesome. Love it. Our parents always have the best life lessons, right? So they keep us,
Absolutely.
they ground us. Carlos, thank you so much for this informative session. We really appreciated your time and having you here share this information with our community. We look forward to having you again soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Same here.